Righty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my read of Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters, Part 3. We are going to be picking up from We Hitch a Ride with Dead Confederates. That's the 10th chapter. And we will also be reading Clarice Blows Up Everything. I finished watching the episode a few days ago, and by God, it was such a good episode. I love the nod to Monster Donuts, and I love the fact that we actually got Hippocampi. I kind of was holding on hope with the fact that we might get the Hippocampi because it wasn't just for traveling purposes, but it was also for the purposes of saving Tyson after the ship blows up. So I'm glad that we got a glance of Hippocampi. I hope that we will get a deeper glance at them, or the hippocampi get longer screen time so we can actually see them properly. I love the backstory that we got with Talia, Luke, and Annabeth, as well as Grover. But I do have to say that I don't really remember this, okay? It's been a really long time since I read this book. I remember reading the flashback or the past in the book, and it was really scary, especially from a 7-year-old's perspective. But in the show, it felt like just another monster hunt. Like, yes, it was scary. Yes, Annabeth was in danger, but the Cyclopses felt like, oh, it's just another thing. It wasn't this giant, terrifying Cyclops that was keeping Annabeth and the others captive. And so it didn't feel scary enough and traumatizing enough to justify Annabeth's fear and anger over Cyclopses and over Tyson specifically. But also in the show, there is the fact that Annabeth is not too pissed off, scared, or antagonistic of Tyson. She's just like, I don't really care for this dude kind of a thingy. So I think it goes to show that they've kind of numbed it down a bit, and it matches the feelings that we get of Annabeth towards Tyson. So I want to read the book and see if it was actually terrifying or if it was just my young mind being like, oh my god, that's scary. So I'm excited to read the past in the book. And upon reflection, to be honest, I was so caught up in the visuals, in the cinematography of it all, I kind of forgot for a really long time that Percy wasn't picked up by Scylla. In the books, I remember Percy being picked up by Scylla, and he was rescued either by Annabeth or Clarice, shooting the backpack because Scylla kind of grabs hold to his backpack and they shoot his backpack, or he himself releases the backpack and falls down. We didn't get to see that in the show, but to be honest, I loved the disappointment that Carrington had when he looked back at Clarice after he realizes the fact that Clarice was essentially using them up as bait. I loved how they showcased who Clarice was as a leader. She was not someone who would simply sacrifice while staying back. She would actively fight them. It was a dumb decision, but it also kind of showed us who Clarice was. It very well might have killed all of them if it wasn't for the hippocampi and the magical stuff that happens in the Sea of Monsters. They very well might have died at that point in time. I am guessing the monster that captured Grover is also going to be the monster that saves Clarice and brings her to Polyphemus's cave because she kind of flew away earlier. I'm guessing the hippocampi is going to save Tyson, and I am guessing that Percy and Annabeth essentially float away into Cersei's island. So I am hyped to see how that happens. In the next episode, we are also going to get guinea pig Percy, which I'm hyped for. And we might see Percy feeling sad about losing Tyson because he doesn't really know if Tyson is alive or dead. I'm hyped to see how the show showcases that, because in the book, when Percy ends up losing Tyson, which I was kind of waiting for that emotional payoff, but it was essentially like, we don't really know what happens to the characters. Maybe we will get that emotional payoff in Cersei's Island as they reach Cersei's Island. But yeah, I remember reading the book and seeing the toll Tyson's death has on Percy, because so far Percy, he likes Tyson, he cares for Tyson, but the thing is, he is still pissed off with Poseidon about how Tyson was claimed. He is still kind of unsure about Tyson, sometimes dismissive. He is like, he's going to get himself killed or he's going to get us killed. I don't really know what to do with this. It's almost like an annoyance for him at this point in time, and so when he loses Tyson, it is a bigger emotional payoff because he's like, I shouldn't have been like that. I do think that emotional payoff happens in the chapter with Cersei's Island, but I am hyped to see everything that leads up to it. So that was a long intro. Let's get started with reading Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. We hitch a ride with Dead Confederates. Just after the intro, right? Like, Percy once again was very unsure about bringing Tyson along on this particular quest, but As they are falling down from the ship in the boat, Percy screams flask and Annabeth has no idea what is happening, but Tyson understands and grabs Hermes' flask without losing the grip on it, and it is so clever. I love the fact that Tyson is slowly, in the book at least, transitioning from simply being muscle to actually actively taking part in the quest. I like that. Hang on. I am hanging on, Annabeth yelled. Tighter. I think this is one thing I like just a tad bit more in the show is Kyron in the book is like, oh, curse my relatives. They're partying and whooping behind him and screaming. And he's just like, can't be bothered to be here, but I'm here, gods above. But in the show, he was just like, oh, nice fun vacation. I am enjoying it. Let's go. Also, just for context clues, Kyron in the book is just interacting with Percy and Annabeth and learning about the quest and the fact that Percy and Annabeth have escaped camp. Whereas in the show, Kyron and Annabeth have this conversation in the very first episode, which I am still unsure about because I think the intent of revealing the prophecy earlier in the show was mostly to keep the hype going that, oh yeah, there is a great prophecy happening. It's not just small villains that we have to look out for, but there is a greater scheme going on, a greater villain to look out for. Makes sense, but I don't know how to feel about it yet. We do get Percy being a therapist to everyone in the show, which is like a direct consequence of Annabeth revealing the prophecy to him. And so that is fun, but yeah, we have to wait and watch for further consequences of the prophecy being revealed to Percy because I really don't think it was revealed to him in the book. Oh, I like this. I remember in the show the conversation that happens between Percy and Tyson as they figure out that Percy can tell their location and the speed that they are going at. And Percy feels proud about the fact that, oh, he knows where he is, which was a really cool touch. In the book, it is Percy and Annabeth figuring out the fact that Percy knows their location and how fast he's going. And Annabeth is like, that is so cool. And he's like, I don't really want to be a human GPS unit, which makes sense. Right? Both of these scenarios make sense. I think I just like it a tad bit more in the show because it goes to show that the connection between Percy and Poseidon may be wonky, but it still exists. And he's proud to make his dad proud and to have some heritage and some powers, not just the water powers, but some powers that are reminiscent of his dad. And it's not like something flashy, it is something that he knows in his soul, in his heart, and in his mind. And that is really cool. So I like that just a tad bit more, I would say. I could feel the change from salt water to fresh water. Suddenly, I was tired and frazzled, like I was coming down off a sugar high. I didn't know where I was anymore or which way to steer the boat. It was a good thing Annabeth was directing me. I like that. I love those tiny parts of world building so much. Basically, it wasn't Manhattan and I didn't like it. Such a New York kid thing to say. This is something that I like in the book as opposed to the show because in the show we just get a huge waterline. I don't know the right term for it, but all it has is Luke's and Thalia's stashed food and clothing, which is fine. I'm not saying that it was a bad thing. Makes sense in a realistic way. But I love the shelter that Annabeth uncovers in the book because it just has a tad bit of that nature magic woven into it and has that fantastical vibe to it. And I really like that just a bit more. Let me read that out for you. After another few minutes, Annabeth said, here, all I saw was a patch of brambles. Then Annabeth moved aside a woven circle of branches like a door, and I realized I was looking into a camouflage shelter. The inside was big enough for three, even with Tyson being the third. The walls were woven from plant material like a Native American hut, but they looked pretty waterproof. Stacked in the corner was everything you could want for a camp out: sleeping bags, blankets, an ice chest, and a kerosene lamp. There were demigod provisions too: bronze javelin tips, a quiver full of arrows, an extra sword, and a box of ambrosia. The place smelled musty like it had been vacant for a long time. A half blood hideout. I looked at Annabeth in awe. You made this place? Thalia and I, she said quietly, and Luke. I just like the magical vibe to it all. Mm. That shouldn't have bothered me. I mean, I knew Thalia and Luke had taken care of Annabeth when she was little. I knew the three of them had been runaways together, hiding from monsters, surviving on their own before Grover found them and tried to get them to Half Blood Hill. But whenever Annabeth talked about the time she spent with them, I kind of felt, I don't know, uncomfortable? No, that's not the word. The word was jealous. This was the exact moment Perkabeth And yes, I am calling it Perkabeth. Whoever calls it Persabeth can not talk to me whatsoever. I don't even care. I've been calling it Perkabeth since I came across the ship name. I'm going to continue calling it Perkabeth because it makes sense in my head. You can fight me on this. But yes, Perkabeth. Ayo. Tyson, I said, would you mind scouting around outside? Like, look for a wilderness convenience store or something. Convenience store? Yeah, for snacks, powdered donuts or something. Just don't go too far. Powdered donuts, Tyson said earnestly. I will look for powdered donuts in the wilderness. He headed outside and started calling, here, donuts. When I was reading it, I was like, Percy, just ask him to stand guard outside, or I don't know, just scout around to look for monsters if there are any in the space, as opposed to being like, go find powdered donuts. The kid worships you. He is going to find powdered donuts in one way or another. What did he mean? I asked, that Thalia would have been on his side. He's wrong. You don't sound sure. Annabeth glared at me and I started to wish I hadn't asked her about this while she was holding a knife. It was the anger and bold response from Luke in the show, and it is the subtlety in the book, and I like both. Annabeth's logic is either logicking really hard or doesn't make any sense because she goes, Percy, you know who you remind me of most? Thalia. You guys are so much alike, it's scary. I mean, either you would have been best friends or you would have strangled each other. Let's go with best friends. Thalia got angry with her dad sometimes. So do you. Would you turn against Olympus because of that? I stared at the quiver of arrows in the corner. No. Okay then, neither would she. Luke strong. Annabeth stuck her knife blade into the dirt. As a kid, I was like, okay, that makes sense. But as an adult, it's almost like Annabeth has put Thalia on a pedestal and Thalia can do no wrong. Whereas Luke continues to see it as a death that shouldn't have happened and the gods not doing anything for Thalia in that moment or even before that. Luke sees the reality of Thalia, whereas Annabeth sees an elder sister that she kind of worshipped and continues to worship to this day and age. So, yeah, crazy stuff. I like that. Those intricacies, those relationships and bonds and what they signify. Powdered donuts, Tyson said proudly, holding up a pastry box. Annabeth stared at him. Where did you get that? We are in the middle of the wilderness. There's nothing around for 15 meters, Tyson said. Monster donut shop just over the hill. And that's the payoff. I told you. Tyson essentially worships Percy just as much as Annabeth worships Thalia. That kid would find powdered donuts for Percy if he asked for it. I love this explanation of how franchisees work in the Percy Jackson world because Annabeth goes, haven't you ever wondered how franchise stores pop up so fast? She asked. One day there's nothing, and then the next day, boom, there's a new burger place or a coffee shop or whatever. First a single store, then two, then four. Exact replicas spreading across the country. No, never thought about it. Percy, some of the chains multiply so fast because all their locations are magically linked to the life force of a monster. Some children of Hermes figured out how to do it back in the 1950s. It's just so hilarious that all this is linked to Hermes because Hermes is the god of travel. And so, having a franchisee that provides you with sustenance is essentially something that Hermes would vibe with. And so, that's how franchises come up. Like, when I read this the first time around, I was like, that's so clever. Oh my gosh. It's kind of crazy. Like, all I remember of the Monster Donut shop from the book was the Monster Donut shop. And that they fought something off that Clarice then kills off with one of the cannons from her ship. In the book, as I'm reading it, I'm remembering the fact that they actually fought off a Hydra, which now I'm sad that we didn't get to see. But also Hydra, let's go. I love this humor. The good news, Tyson was momentarily out of danger. The bad news, I was about to be melted into a puddle of goo. This is the humor that I genuinely miss. Even on the verge of death in a life and death scenario and fight against a monster that Percy has never fought against and is freaked out by and is worried about Tyson and Annabeth, this guy still has the time to go, oh, good news, Tyson's fine. Bad news, I am not. One of the heads snapped at me experimentally. Without thinking, I swung my sword. No, Annabeth yelled. Too late. I sliced the Hydra's head clean off. It rolled away into the grass, leaving a flailing stump, which immediately stopped bleeding and began to swell like a balloon. And this reminds me so much of Clarice meeting the oracle speaking to her, and she, in a state of panic, swings the sword, cuts off the oracle's head. And then the oracle's head gets attached. Gods above know how. Magic, the curse that was placed on her, no one knows. But also crazy stuff. In a matter of seconds, the wounded neck split into two necks, each of which grew a full-sized head. Now I was looking at an eight-headed hydra. Percy, Annabeth scolded. You just opened another monster donut shop somewhere. That is not the top of his priorities and concerns. It's like I dodged a spray of acid. I'm about to die and you're worried about that? How do we kill it? I love Tyson jumping in front of Annabeth as the Hydra was about to kill her. And it's so cool because in the book, Tyson so far has no reason to distrust Annabeth. But in the show, we get moments where Tyson does distrust Annabeth, not completely, but he does have those moments, like the time they were doing the chariot race, and Annabeth was like, Bronte, if the Poseidon chariot overtakes us, push it back, make sure that it falls back. He hears that. And then the distrust that he sees on Annabeth when she doesn't immediately go, no, it's fine. I know you won't hurt or bring down Olympus when Percy asks her, like, what do you think? Tyson distrusts her, not completely, but enough because he doesn't immediately tell her about Rainbow. We get to see Rainbow in the water after Annabeth threw her bracelet away again. So I don't know. I kind of like both versions because it shows us that Tyson is not going to blindly follow anyone and his priority is always going to be Percy in the show. But in the book, there is no reason why he distrusts Annabeth yet. So he's always going to jump up in front of her. And once again, I kind of get it. In the book, the intention was to show that not all monsters are monsters, right? And we've kind of already covered that in the show in the first season, that not all monsters are monsters. And we kind of already get that continuation of that theme in the second season where Luke goes, hey, by the way, monsters are the children of God, so they are not like monsters. We don't use that word around here. But in the book series, it is being explored for the first time in Sea of Monsters. And Annabeth is still worried about cyclopses and what they mean and they show because of her trauma. So it makes sense the way the book and the show is being written. And I prefer both versions to be honest because they have different themes, they are following different storylines. So that's fun. I didn't dare look away from the Hydra, but if that was who I thought it was behind us, I figured we now had enemies on two fronts. A gravely male voice said, they are too close, my lady. Damn the heroes, the girl said. Full steam ahead. Sorry, I'll say that again. Full speed ahead until we find the prophet. Good. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. Losers, Clarice sneered. But I suppose I have to rescue you. Come aboard. So fun. Ooh, I love it in the book because it's Clarice being Clarice. In the show, I like the fight that we have between Percy and Clarice and Annabeth cleverly getting rid of the three people Clarice named and showed off that, hey, I have three people. They are the most important parts of my crew. And Annabeth was like, fair, let me kill them. I would have done that, honestly. But I honestly thought she would kill like one of them. She killed all three. Fair. I kind of, if I think about it, no, even if I think about it, I like both versions. In the book, Clarice has not been betrayed by Annabeth. Clarice did not choose Annabeth as a quest mate. In the show, however, she did. And so her anger and betrayal seems fair in the show, and the fight seems fair in the show. In here, she's just like, dumbasses. Why did you have to run away from camp? Losers. I get it, but also at the same time, this is my quest. So like, I prefer both versions. Let's leave it at that. The dead Confederate sailors approved of Annabeth because she told them she was from Virginia. They were interested in me too because my name was Jackson, like the Southern General, but then I ruined it by telling them I was from New York. They all hissed and muttered curses about Yankees. You should have told them that you were the son of Poseidon. That would have got you brownie points with dead sailors. What is wrong with you, Percy? Flaunt your amazingness and your status. Tyson was terrified of them. All throughout the tour, he insisted Annabeth hold his hand, which she didn't look too thrilled about. I like it. I like Annabeth still helping Tyson even though she doesn't want to. That's fair. Tantalus expelled you for eternity, Clarice told us smugly. Mr. D said if any of you show your face at camp again, he will turn you into squirrels and run you over with his SUV. Crazy stuff. I like it. Go off. I support Mr. D's rights and wrongs. No, I don't. But also at the same time, I kind of do. He's chaotic as hell. No, I don't care what the oracle. She stopped herself. What? I said. What did the oracle tell you? Nothing. Clarice's ears turned pink. All you need to know is that I'm finishing this quest and you're not helping. And so I think I kind of like the vibe a bit more in the show because we get Percy trying to understand where Clarice is coming from as well as help her out. And that is really, really cool. But I also kind of get why she distrusts Percy in the book. She's just like, he's an attention seeker. He's going to take over this quest and I'm going to fail, knowing her prophecy. So I think I kind of like it in the show just a tad bit more because it helps us bridge that gap between Percy and Clarice. I like that. Why is Polyphemus sounding like he had one obsession and he made it his entire lifestyle? Because this is getting chaotic. The Cyclops had a wool covered lazy boy recliner and a wool covered television set, crude bookshelves loaded with sheep collectibles, coffee mugs shaped like sheep faces, plaster figurines of sheep, sheep board games, and picture books and action figures. The floor was littered with piles of sheep bones and other bones that didn't exactly look like sheep. This was so scary, okay, because Grover was sitting at his room, desperately unraveling his wedding train, when the boulder door rolled aside and the Cyclops bellowed, "Aha!" Grover yelped, "Dear, I didn't. You were so quiet." "Unraveling," Polyphemus roared. "So that's the problem." "Oh no, I wasn't." "Come." Polyphemus grabbed Grover around the waist and half carried, half dragged him through the tunnels of the cave. And I was like, Grover's dead. But then all he does is he goes outside, picks up the nearest sheep like it was a stuffed animal, and shaved off its wool. He handed a fluffy mass of it to Grover. "Put that on the spinning wheel," he said proudly. "Magic cannot be unraveled." "Oh, well, poor honey pie," Polyphemus grinned. "Bad weaver. Haha. Not to worry, that thread will solve problem. Finish wedding drain by tomorrow? Isn't that thoughtful of you?" And honestly, isn't that so cute? I kind of almost feel bad for Polyphemus at this point because he genuinely cares for Grover. Why? I don't know. It's not like love at first sight. He can't really see him. Oh, I'm sorry. I was on my way upstairs when something made me freeze. A presence nearby, something familiar and unpleasant. For no particular reason, I felt like picking a fight. I wanted to punch a dead Confederate. The last time I'd felt like that kind of anger. Instead of going up, I crept to the edge of the ventilation grate and peered down into the boiler deck. Clarice was standing right below me, talking to an image that shimmered in the steam from the boilers. A muscular man in black leather biker clothes, with a military haircut, red tinted sunglasses, and a knife strapped to his side. My fist clenched. It was my least favorite Olympian, Ares, the god of war. "I don't want excuses, little girl," he growled. "Yes, father," Clarice mumbled. "You don't want to see me mad, do you?" "No, father." "No, father." Ares mimicked. "You're pathetic. I should have let one of my sons take this quest." "I will succeed," Clarice promised, her voice trembling. "I will make you proud." "You'd better," he warned. "You asked me for this quest, girl. If you let that slime ball Jackson kid steal it from you." "But the oracle said—" "I don't care what it said," Ares bellowed with such force that his image shimmered. "You will succeed, and if you don't—" He raised his fist. Even though he was only a figure in the steam, Clarice flinched. "Do we understand each other?" Ares growled. "Ah, the way I hate this man so much. Come on." I didn't know what to think about what I'd seen downstairs. It bothered me almost as much as the dream about Grover. Because this boy has been through it. He has been through Gabe. Oh, it's really so fair for Percy to see Ares and go, "It's on site with this guy." Fair, man. I would punch him as well. "Hurricane," Annabeth asked. "No," Clary said. "Charybdis. Charybdis." Hey, I don't know how to pronounce this as much as Percy doesn't know how to pronounce it. Stick with it. Annabeth paled. "Are you crazy?" "Only one way into the Sea of Monsters, straight between Charybdis and her sister Scylla." Clarice pointed to the top of the cliffs, and I got the feeling something lived up there that I did not want to meet. "What do you mean the only way?" I asked. "The sea is wide open, just sail around them." Clarice rolled her eyes. "Don't you know anything? If I tried to sail around them, they would just appear in my path again. If you want to get into the Sea of Monsters, you have to sail through them." "What about the clashing rocks?" Annabeth said. "That's another gateway. Jason used it." "I can't blow apart rocks with my cannons," Clarice said. "Monsters, on the other hand—" "You are crazy," Annabeth decided. I was going to say that Annabeth in the show is a tad bit more aware of the Sea of Monsters because she was like, "Percy, they will appear in your path again," as opposed to Clarice being the one telling Percy about it. But then Annabeth was like, "What about the clashing rocks? Jason used it." And I was like, "You know what? Never mind." Percy's asking about Scylla, and Clarice is like, "She lives in a cave up on those cliffs. If we get too close, her sneaky heads will come down and start plucking sailors off the ship." "Choose Scylla then," I said. "Everybody goes below deck and we chug right past." "No," Clarice insisted. "If Scylla doesn't get her easy meat, she might pick up the whole ship. Besides, she's too high to make a good target. My cannon can't shoot straight up. Sharpetus just sits there at the center of a whirlpool. We are going to steam straight towards her, train our guns on her, and blow her to Tartarus." It's a good plan. Honestly, if Clarice planned this far ahead, I would have just gotten some kind of livestock, put it on the deck like sheep, if you will, because I was reading about Polyphemus. Put them on the deck and let Scylla eat sheep or wooden cutouts of soldiers. You know? You're just going to distract her either ways. Distract her like this. Right? It could make for a good plan. She could pray to Ares, even though Ares is a bitch. He would like a good strategic plan. Or like in the show, she could put her dead confederates up there. As much as I'm liking the book Clarice and her plan, I think I kind of prefer show Clarice just because it gives her a bit more depth in the show and shows her what kind of a person she is. Like she cares for her crew, even though they are dead. It's a struggle for her. And so kind of prefer show Clarice over book Clarice at this point in time. I mean, book Clarice is clever. I am not saying that she isn't, but I think in the show we just got a tad bit more depth as opposed to the Clarice that we're getting here. All we are getting here is that yeah, she's clever and her circumstances aren't as good, but she is being defined by her circumstances. She's not being defined by her own actions, which is why I kind of prefer the show over the book just in this particular point. Percy not wanting to let Tyson go to fix the boiler room and the pistons. Oh, Tyson, no, I grabbed his arm. "It's too dangerous." He patted my hand. "Only way, brother." His expression was determined, confident even. I'd never seen him look like this before. "I will fix it. Be right back." As I watched him follow the smoldering sailor down the hatch, I had a terrible feeling. I wanted to run after him, but the ship lurched again, and then I saw Charybdis. Charybdis was an orthodontist's nightmare. She was nothing but a huge black maw with bad teeth alignment and a serious overbite, and she had done nothing for centuries but eat without brushing after meals. Shut up. That was hilarious. The fact that they were almost about to make it through, but then Charybdis's water or exhale essentially pushed them back towards the cliffs, and Scylla then picked up the sailor. Oh, crazy stuff. I uncapped Riptide and tried to swipe at the monster as it carried off another deckhand, but I was way too slow. "Everyone get below," I yelled. "We can't," Clarice drew her own sword. "Below deck is in flames." "Lifeboats," Annabeth said quickly. "They'll never get clear off of the cliffs," Clarice said. "We will all be eaten." "We have to try." "Percy, the flask." "I can't leave Tyson. We have to get the boats ready." Ah, the chaos of this particular scene. Crazy. "Get the other boat," I threw Annabeth the flask. "I'll get Tyson." "You can't," she said. "The heat will kill you." I didn't listen. I ran for the boiler room hatch when suddenly my feet weren't touching the deck anymore. I was flying straight up, the wind whistling in my ears, the side of the cliff only inches from my face. Scylla had somehow caught me by the knapsack and was lifting me up towards her lair. Without thinking, I swung my sword behind me and managed to jab the thing in her beady yellow eye. She grunted and dropped me. The fall would have been bad enough considering I was 30 meters in the air, but as I fell, the CSS Birmingham exploded below me. Karoom! The engine room blew up, sending chunks of ironclad flying in either direction like a fiery set of wings. "Tyson!" I yelled. Oh, okay. It wasn't Annabeth or Clarice who rescued Percy, it was Percy just stabbing Scylla in her eye. And I kind of misconstrued the blowing up of the ship with the fact that someone had shot something at Percy that made him escape Scylla, but it was just Percy being like, "Kachak!" And then she's like, "Aha!" Drops Percy. Then I heard a different kind of explosion, the sound of Hermes' magic flask being opened a little too far. White sheets of wind blasted in every direction, scattering the lifeboats, lifting me out of my free fall and toppling me across the ocean. I couldn't see anything. I spun in the air, got clonked on the head by something hard, and hit the water with a crash that would have broken every bone in my body if I hadn't been the son of the sea god. The last thing I remembered was sinking in a burning sea, knowing that Tyson was gone forever and wishing I were able to drown. Oh, oh my god. Okay. The fact that Annabeth probably opened the flask to save Percy from the free fall, and the fact that Percy survived, but he wanted to drown because Tyson was no more, potentially. Oh, the grief this particular chapter gave me, because Percy did want to save him. He did want to protect him, but he couldn't. He wanted to go downstairs multiple times. He was going downstairs the last time before Scylla picked him up. As a kid, this chapter broke me so badly, you guys have no idea. And I think we are going to see a bit more of that in the show in the next episode, because Percy has to grip with the fact that Annabeth and Percy survive. He doesn't know anything about Clarice, and he doesn't know about Tyson being saved by the hippocampi. So, oh, I can't wait for the emotional barrage that we get in the next episode. But overall, I loved the book. There are elements that I am enjoying both in the book versus the show. The book gave us, so far, we haven't learned about Annabeth Talia and Luke's past. I think we will get that in the next few chapters, potentially, after they kind of realize that Tyson might not have survived, and Percy is sad and Annabeth tells him about why she kind of distrusts Cyclopses. I think that's when we are going to get it in the book. In the show, we already got the backstory. We are kind of pushing forward with some elements in the show. I get why they're doing it, and it's fair. You kind of have to keep the viewers hooked, so it makes sense why we are getting what we are getting in the show. I like both aspects in the book. I like Percy being able to see another layer of Clarice, once again, based on her circumstances and based on the interaction that she has with Ares, and the guilt he must be feeling, but also the fear he must be feeling after having gone through something similar, because he's like, I couldn't see Clarice in the eyes. And I get the book. I like it a lot. I mean, I don't really like it for Clarice. She's just a kid. In the show, we are seeing different explorations of Clarice, and it is her own choices that are giving her the depth that we want from a character. And it's really nice to see that in the show. So overall, really fun. I am really vibing with it. The book to TV translation and adaptation is really, really cool. I loved seeing Charybdis. The visuals were really great in the show, and it really translated the image that I had in my head into show format and raised the stakes really high. So I like that. I kind of prefer the pre-planning that Clarice did in the show with Percy and Annabeth before they entered the Sea of Monsters, as opposed to the planning that happened pretty much right off the bat in the book, because it was a joint decision, and Clarice saw the sense in the plan that Annabeth was sharing. In the book, however, it is Clarice being like, no, we are going ahead with this, and it was the quest leader making the decision. And so I kind of prefer both versions, might prefer the show version just a tad bit more because of the depth that we get of Clarice's character and the conflict that she faces. But overall, really, really fun. I can't wait to watch the next episode and then read the corresponding chapters based on the next episode. Until then, let me know your favorite moments from this particular video down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, and all of that jazz. And I'll see you in the next one. Until then, toodaloo! Bye bye!